All right, so if we got this far, you should have joined me on the journey of installing everything we needed to start coding. We've downloaded our snippets, and that was in the last video. And in that video, I said we weren't going to do a lot of typing. Well, we're going to start out with a little bit of typing just so we can get the basics of how the internet sort of works, the very, very basics of how it works. And we're going to just type up a little old school web page. So we're going to do that by hand, and so I'm going to do a couple of things first. First, I'm going to start the terminal, so you can do that. And I'm going to sort of drag this to the other side of this line so that it just is something that's in the launcher that we can always get access to. I'm going to do the same with VS Code. I'm going to launch VS Code here. And I'm going to drag that icon in the launcher just over here near the terminal so I can launch it out of here whenever I want. I'm just going to close this little window here. Now in one of our very early lessons, we used the terminal to create a new folder, and that lived here, over here in our home directory. And you'll remember it was called My Apps. I'm going to open it up here, and I'm going to put a new folder in here, just using the OS called Web App. There it is. And this is something we're going to do a little bit later on with our Node.js app, but we're going to drag this folder to the Visual Studio icon and just drop it on there once it darkens up like that. And you'll see now that our web app folder is the open folder inside Visual Studio. So I'll close this here. So you can imagine that this web app folder here, and I'll open the web app folder, is now the contents of this are now visible through Visual Studio, VS Code. You see this? So if I click this here, and I get these options here, I can put a new file by clicking this button here into the web app folder. So I'm just going to call it index.html. There we go. Great. You see what happened? I have a web page over here in my web app folder. So it's the same view. I'm looking at this folder through the window of VS Code. So remember that, because we're going to do that again and again as well. It's the same thing. We're looking at this index file in that folder in here. There's the web app folder. There's the file. So I'm going to close this one now. Will I close that? Yeah, I'll close that now. Okay. Beaut. So I'm going to type some stuff in here. So when we all started first learning how to do HTML websites, we would write tags. So the basis of HTML is that there are tags for everything, and you would normally start with an HTML tag. Now remember I said VS Code is going to help us with this stuff. So rather than have to type the whole tag, it's going to give me some shortcuts. So as I type this first HTML tag, it closed it for me. Now the thing you need to remember here is that all of these old HTML tags have an opening tag and a closing tag that looks like this. We're about to start some HTML, and this is where we end the HTML. Okay, so every page pretty much had an HTML top and bottom, and then we would write something like, we would have sections in here. So I'm going to put the head section in here and close it. Again, it closes the tag for me, and we would nest them. So we would have these sort of tabs that made it easier to read HTML as we went. So there's the head section. I might make a body for this page. Let's put a body tag here. And again, I'm going to leave that on the same nested level as the head. And I'm away. I can then just put some plain text in here wherever I like. Oh, sorry. Let's put some plain text in the head. So I'm going to call this my site. Great. So I'm going to save this, and I've hit Command S to save it. And if I go back now and I open this, go into My Apps, go into my web app folder, and I double click this and it'll open up in Safari, you see that the browser just opens this up. You can see the location of this here in my browser. But this isn't good for the internet. It's not much good at all for the internet. This page needs to be published via the internet via a web server so that other people on the other end of the internet can find it. So luckily our Mac comes built in with a web server that we can run, and this is how you run it. You just run this code in the folder that you want to publish. So I'm going to copy this, and you'll remember that we can use the change directory. You remember these commands from later. ls will list all of the folders that we have in the directory we're in right now. So we know that my apps is where we want to be headed. We will remember that we go cd my apps will get us into the my apps folder, and if we look at what's in there now, we see the web app folder. Great, so we'll change directory again and we'll get into the web app folder. There we go, we're in there now. So we're in the web app folder. If we now use this code, type this code into the browser, now that we're in that, into the terminal, once we're in that folder, it'll start a web server serving the contents of this folder. So I'll now start Chrome and the other browser that we have, and I might even just pin that to the launcher as well by dragging that over here. And I'll read back here what it says. It's serving on a port that's 8080. 8080, the port is the port we're using. So if I type into this browser localhost, and I then, it's going to ask me for 8080, but if I put a colon and then I put 8080, I should see the contents of that folder published via the web server. And again, we do. We see my site. That's great. So this is the way that a computer publishes something to the internet via a web server. It'll be running a thing like this on the server itself, and others can now see this. This local host would obviously be the name of the website once it's published. But right here we can see localhost being published out of a local web folder, and it's a good way to test the website. Great. So let's get back to our app, and I'm going to click back here on Visual Studio. I'm going to leave everything in place here, and you'll see me clicking between one and the other. Hopefully you can keep up and do the same. But we're back here on our code, and I talked about tags before. So between the web server and the browser, there are certain tags that are standard agrees will help us to make things look a certain way. One is the heading tag, so I'll put a heading 1 tag. Now this is where Visual Code doesn't really help us. I've got to move this to the other side of my text. So you see I've got a head tag, and inside that head I see a heading opening tag and a heading closing tag, and in between the words my site. So if I save that and then I refresh the browser here, we should see that this text is now styled as a heading, and there it is. Now this is pretty basic, isn't it? Let's have a look at what would happen if we then type some text into our body tag right here. This is the body. Let's do that. Save it and refresh the website, which is publishing this. Now we see we've got a heading section and some text in the body. So it's pretty easy, but still pretty fun. Again, we'll tag this up with let's tag it up with a strong tag so that it goes bold. So if I write strong here and close the tag, I then have to have my I can do it the other way. I can put my text inside the tag. Let's move that, Command X, and I'll paste it in here, Command V. So my strong text should turn bold once we save this and refresh the browser. There it goes, and it turned a little bit bold. And finally, we can style some text. So let's just say that we want this to be blue, and I'll say that this is the blue body. We can put a style tag right here. Let's put a style tag. So I'll put some spaces here just so I've got some room. I'll open a tag, and I'm going to make an A like this, and I'm going to write style like this. Then I put equals, and this is where it allows me to nominate some styles. Now this is you can learn how the details of all this, but just type what I'm doing and you'll see how it works. We're going to say that the color of this ought to be blue, so I put a colon and I just nominate that this wants to be blue. That's it. I of course need to close the close the tag, and you'll see that the A tag is closed again. So I want to make sure that my blue body text lives within my lives inside that tag. So we've got a tag there. There it is. And there it is. So I should see now that I have a strong, bold. This is all bold because the strong tag fits around all of my text. But within that, I'll have a section, an A section here, which opens and closes, that instructs this text to turn blue. So let's see if that works. I save this. I go back to my browser and refresh it. And sure enough, this turns blue. Great. We might do some things just to neaten this up. We can take out the extra spaces that live in between there, and take out these ones as well. And we've now got a neat, compact bit of HTML that is published via the browser and gives some life to some pretty plain text. So this is how static websites work. We publish them as HTML, or something that produces HTML ends up publishing HTML out via a web browser, and somebody at the other end visits your website, and that is interpreted between the web server and the browser. It's interpreted via the tags. This is how it's styled and why it looks a certain way. Good, so that's the basics. We're going to do more than this, of course, but it's important that we understand what happens when we publish some HTML, or how the browser comes to look at certain code and present it a certain way to the user. Great, so have some fun with that. You might like to Google a little bit more about HTML and practice things in here. Just try a few things, keep saving that and keep refreshing the browser, and you'll see your changes reflected. Great. That's enough for now.